What piece of wisdom did someone leave you that you only understood years later? My Uncle Raymond used to say, "The thing you're avoiding is usually the thing you need." He said it often enough that it became one of those sayings you catalog without absorbing, one of the repeated phrases that adults produce in quantity and children accept with patience while waiting for them to stop. He was a Vietnam veteran, a retired postal worker, a man who gardened obsessively and cooked badly, and laughed at his own jokes with a sincerity that made you forgive him for telling them. He died in 2001 at the age of 68, and it was not until 2019, 18 years after his death and 12 years into my own retirement, that I finally understood what he meant. My name is Leonard Washington. I am 73 years old. I was a high school history teacher in Memphis, Tennessee for 34 years, and when I retired at 61, I did what I had been telling myself I would do in retirement for at least a decade. I stopped. I had earned it. I rested. I watched television. I read. I did the things that are classified as leisure, which is to say, I did nothing in particular, and I did it consistently. And after about a year of it, I noticed something I didn't want to notice, which was that I was not content. I want to tell you about what I was avoiding, because my Uncle Raymond's line turned out to apply directly. There was a book. There is always a book in stories like this. The project that has been deferred year after year until retirement arrives, and then, mysteriously, continues to be deferred. My book was a history of the black neighborhoods of Memphis between 1920 and 1960. I had been doing the preliminary research since the mid-90s. I had boxes of notes and photocopied documents and interview transcriptions. 30 years of accumulated material that I had gathered carefully and diligently and never organized into anything that resembled a manuscript. The year I retired, I bought a new desk. I set up the office in the spare bedroom and arranged the boxes carefully and bought a good chair and a new laptop. And then, for months, I sat in that chair and I did not write. I watched documentaries instead. I read. I reorganized the boxes. I started a filing system for the documents, which took several weeks and produced an extremely well-organized set of files that I then did not consult. I took long walks. I called my sister in Atlanta more than I had in years, which she appreciated. I was, by every visible measure, a retired man at leisure. I was, by the measure that mattered, avoiding the thing in the spare bedroom. My nephew Marcus, Raymond's grandson, a man in his early 40s who has inherited some of his grandfather's directness without inheriting his bad jokes, visited me in 2019 and spent 2 days watching me move around the book project. On the second evening, he said, "Uncle Leonard, "What's happening with the Memphis project?" I said I was still in the research phase. He looked at the desk in the spare room, which was visible from where we were sitting, and he said, "Granddad used to say that the thing you're avoiding is usually the thing you need." He said it without accusation, the way you say something that is simply true. And then he let it sit there. I went to bed that night and lay awake until 2 in the morning. I was thinking about what I was afraid of, because Marcus was right that I was avoiding something. And avoiding something means being afraid of it. And I had not asked myself what I was afraid of. It is uncomfortable to ask that question at the age of 71. You assume you are past the age of being frightened by your own projects. Here is what I was afraid of. I was afraid the book was not good enough. I was afraid that 30 years of research and 34 years of teaching history and a career's worth of knowing what mattered would not, when assembled into a manuscript, produce something that deserved to exist. I was afraid of writing it and discovering that the thing I had been building toward for 30 years was ordinary. I was afraid of the work, not because it was hard, but because the finished version would be judged, and the unfinished version could still be anything. Raymond's saying had always seemed to me like advice about practical avoidance. The phone call you put off, the errand you defer, the conversation you avoid. What I understood, lying awake at 2 in the morning at the age of 71, was that it applied with equal force to the internal avoidances, the things you don't do, because doing them means the possibility of finding out something about yourself that you have been not finding out for a long time. I got up. I made coffee. I went to the spare bedroom and I sat down at the desk. I opened a document on the laptop and I wrote, Chapter 1, A City Within a City. And then I wrote a sentence beneath it, and then another sentence. The first page took 4 hours. It was terrible. The second page took 2 hours. It was less terrible. By the end of the week, I had 12 pages, and they were uneven, and the structure was wrong, and 2 of the sections needed to be completely rethought. And I was more fully awake than I had been in the previous 3 years of retirement. I have been working on the book for 5 years. It is not finished. I am not going to tell you that Raymond's wisdom produced the manuscript overnight, or that the fear dissolved as soon as I began. It didn't. The fear has been present at the desk on many mornings, and I have written past it anyway, which is, I have come to understand, what writing is. You sit down with the thing you've been avoiding, and you stay longer than the avoiding would let you. And the thing that is underneath the avoidance begins to show itself. I have 260 pages of a first draft. I have spoken with a literary agent who expressed genuine interest. I do not know what will happen with the book, and I have made my peace with not knowing. What I know is that the years of research have assembled into something real, and that the people I have written about, the grocers and the teachers and the musicians and the ministers who built a world within a world in Memphis between the wars, deserve to have their story told carefully and with attention, and that I am the person who has spent 30 years preparing to tell it, and that I am doing it. Raymond said, "The thing you're avoiding is usually the thing you need." I think what he meant, having lived the long way around to understanding it, is this: avoidance and need are not opposites. They are, most often, the same territory. The thing we avoid is usually the thing that matters most to us, the thing with the most at stake, the thing where the possibility of failure or disappointment or discovering our own limits is most acute. We avoid it precisely because we care about it most, and the care, which is the reason we avoid it, is also the reason it will not leave us alone. The thing you're putting off, the project, the conversation, the version of yourself you've been waiting to become, is probably the thing that deserves your attention most directly. Not when the conditions are perfect, not when the fear is gone. Now, with the fear still there. Raymond knew this. He got it from somewhere, probably from Vietnam, or from years of work, or from whatever it is that some people manage to understand before others do. He told me probably 40 times over 20 years. It took 18 years after his death and a nephew who quoted him at the right moment, and 53 years after I first heard it, for it to actually reach me. I hope it reaches you faster than it reached me. Please subscribe and stay. Leave a comment about the piece of wisdom someone gave you that you only understood years later. I suspect we all have one. If this gave you something, hit the like button and share it with the person who gave you yours. A book that helped me understand creative avoidance was The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. It is about resistance, the force that keeps us from doing the work we know we need to do. It is direct and honest and short, and it belongs on the desk of anyone who keeps not doing the thing. The link is in the description. My name is Leonard Washington. I am 73 years old. I am writing the book. My Uncle Raymond was right, and I needed Marcus to remind me, and I am grateful to both of them.